How should the Marcos administration enforce the historic Hague ruling? To join us in this discussion, we have One News Defense Editor Manny Mogato, who is joining us live here in the studio, and Stratbase ADR Institute President Dindo Manhit, who is joining us via Zoom. Welcome to the big story, Manny and Dindo.
Good evening. Welcome. Welcome.
Happy anniversary.
Manny, I want to start with you. Itong Hague ruling, it went, during the course of the Duterte administration, this went from a major victory that he inherited, essentially at the start of his term.
To a piece of paper.
To a piece of paper,
Yeah.
sabi niya. But towards the end, you had the DFA itself invoking that piece of paper. Where are we right now? And who do you credit or blame for whatever this ruling stands for at this point?
Well, I think we should give credit to former Foreign Affairs Secretary Teddy Locsin Jr. and Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana for pushing back because Duterte's policy of appeasement did not work. And without Lorenzana and Locsin, we really could have lost a lot. But since they are insisting on it and invoking our legal victory, I think in the end, Duterte saw the light. Because in the end, he ordered Locsin to scrap the joint venture agreement with China, which really nothing happened.
But is it not too little, too late?
It's little too late, but the problem is Duterte tried to appease Xi Jinping and the Chinese government by becoming too friendly with them, hoping that economically will benefit. Because during Aquino's time, remember when we had this problem, China impose a lot of non-tariff barriers on our fruits, pineapples, bananas, mangoes. Pinauwi sa atin lahat kasi may ano daw, peste, no? Pero wala naman, no? So I think Duterte wanted to benefit by economically, but nothing happened because China promised $24 billion in his first visit in October 2016. But at the end of his term, ano nakuha natin? 2 tulay. Di ba?
All right, but that's done na, di ba? Nasa Marcos administration na tayo. How does this all bode for the foreign policy of President Bongbong Marcos?
Well, that remains to be seen. But based on his initial statements, we are quite hopeful that he will invoke the arbitral ruling.
Is Dindo Manhit with us now? Dindo, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, traveling really from traffic.
Mukhang wala pa si...
Yes, I'm here.
Mukhang wala pa si Dindo Manhit. But sige, let's turn to you pa rin, Manny. What about the public? I mean, at the start, what was the perception, what was the emotion, what was the hope of the people 6 years ago when this arbitral ruling came out? And what is your sense of the perception of people and appreciation for this ruling 6 years later?
Well, the Filipino people are not concerned with territorial disputes. But because of what happened in Scarborough Shoal, when our fishermen were denied entry into this lagoon, and our survey ships were harassed in Reed Bank, as well as our resupply ships in Ayungin Shoal, I think the Filipino people understood what we are going to lose if we allow China to just do their thing. So the surveys done by Pulse Asia from 2016 up to this year are very consistent. Majority of Filipinos wanted the government to invoke the arbitral ruling because we won it. It's a landmark decision, although it does not grant sovereignty
I see.
to the area. It recognizes our sovereign rights, our economic rights to exploit and explore, to find oil and extract, and to fish in the area. This is very important for our energy security and our food security. And China is also very interested because it has 1 billion mouths to feed. And it is already a net importer of oil. So they want all the resources there. In fact, the agreement we had with China is that they want exclusive partnership with the Philippines to explore oil in the Reed Bank and the other areas. By the way, the Reed Bank is within the Philippine 200-mile economic zone. So it is ours. China has no right to impose what they want. But they are claiming it based on historical rights that the 9-dash line, which the arbitral ruling nullified. And the ruling is final. So China cannot appeal. I think China has to recognize it once and for all.
All right, on that thought, hold that thought. Manny, I'm just going to invite everyone to join us in this conversation. Our big question tonight: how can the Marcos administration protect the Philippines' rights over the West Philippine Sea? On July 12, 2016, the Philippines won the arbitration case it filed against China at the Hague-based Permanent Court of Arbitration over certain issues in the South China Sea. The ruling invalidated China's 9-dash line claim over the disputed waters and recognized these as part of the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. The tribunal also found that China had violated the Philippines' sovereign rights in its EEZ. Despite the win, China has repeatedly ignored the ruling and continued its incursions in Philippine waters. The Philippines has so far filed over 200 diplomatic protests against China's illegal activities within the West Philippine Sea. Still joining us tonight, One News's Defense Editor Manny Mogato, and via Zoom, Stratbase ADR Institute President Dindo Manhit. Welcome to the discussion, Dindo.
Good evening, Sean. Good evening to everyone.
Good evening, Dindo. Dindo, it's been 6 years since the ruling. I wanted to ask you, going to the arbitral process resulted not only resulted in a victory for the Philippines, it also represented a strategy, right? The Philippines basically made the decision to internationalize the issue. Let's look back. Before it went to the arbitral court, there was a lot of debate on whether or not we pursue it bilaterally or we internationalize the whole matter. Looking back, how wise was that? What was the impact of that strategy?
That was very important, Robbie. No? When you look at a small country like us, to internationalize it is to define ourselves as part of this international rule-based system. That rules are important. And in this rules system, those that have basis in international law will have strength. And that is what we saw. That's why we won the case 6 years ago. And part of winning the case is that it defined what are the territories that even defined for the Philippines that there's no disputed territories, but also defined for our neighbors, especially when it negated the argument of a 9-dash line.
But what does that mean in terms of the other stakeholders here? Not just the international community, our neighbors, Vietnam, Malaysia. Did this ruling essentially give them as well a platform, particularly at the time when we were the ones not picking up this ruling?
What we had was that it will outlast any administration. What we had was an international law jurisprudence that defined where we are. And that is what we see now. 6 years after Duterte, that tried to appease China, and we're here where we are now, whereby our ruling stays the same. And that's how even our own Department of Foreign Affairs sees it. And that is the victory 6 years ago.
That's right. So 6 years later, we can argue that, the Duterte administration sat on it. How do you think the Marcos administration is going to run with this 2016 arbitral ruling?
we hope we can learn that 6 years of appeasement did not bring us closer to protecting our interests as a nation. But as a nation, we hold on to what is given to us as international law, and from there, build on that. Build alliances to support us. Build support coming from the international community.
How big and how significant enough elbow room does the government have between, on the one hand, the excesses and the mistakes of appeasement, and then on the other hand, the President Marcos also saying that, look, strengthening our relationship with China is still something that's very important to us. Between friendship and appeasement, is there enough wiggle room there for us to maneuver?
We have to realize that 6 years of appeasement has not really built and support the interests of the Philippine people in terms of trade, investment. So we learn from history. We learn from this contemporary history this past 6 years and build from that. And from there, move forward. We have a new administration that can learn that appeasement will not generate enough strength to have a strong bilateral relationship. It becomes a one-way relationship. So hopefully, we'll learn from the lessons of the past 6 years.
But have there really been no gains at all, Dindo? Because 6 years of appeasement, a lot of pundits were arguing, that this foreign policy shift did gain us a lot of, let's say, the wiggle room moved over to our relationship with our other allies, such as the United States. And they would argue that that is an achievement of the Duterte administration. What do you think about that?
The past 6 years has nothing to do with what the Duterte said administration. It's what we as a country has moved forward from mere dispute to now we control, based on the international law, based on the rule-based system, that we have sovereign rights, we have economic rights over this area, and the international community would like countries to respect that. And that's what we should learn from. We should realize that the Duterte's appeasement policy will not bring us forward. It did not bring any investments that people spoke of. It did not create jobs and investments that help the economy.
Dindo, it didn't create or provide much, but did we lose anything? Kanina pinag-uusapan namin ni Manny Mogato this famous line, of course, with President Duterte, notwithstanding the DFA and the DND eventually invoking the ruling. But at one point, the low point of this ruling, President Duterte calling it a piece of paper. Did we lose anything over the past 6 years?
We lost time. We could have built alliances. We could have built partnership to strengthen our nation, to protect our interests. We have friends in the international community ready to help us. And we see that now. Even today, we see strong democratic nations standing firm with us, celebrating the victory of a small country based on international rules, international order. We should give value to that. And that's what we have lost in the past 6 years. Hopefully, we should not lose another 6 years. We should not squander another 6 years in not doing anything but appeasing a strong neighbor.
Okay, Dindo, we see you're on your way to another important appointment. Maraming salamat. We'll let you go.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Manny, balikan ko lang isang sinabi ni Dindo. Sinabi niya, if I got it right, you tell me if you agree. He essentially said, look, we lost time. But he seems to be saying also that's all we lost. He seems to be saying the ruling is intact, the international stakeholdership over this has strengthened, has developed. We're on stable footing as far as we got from this victory. Do you agree that time lang ang nawala sa atin?
I agree with Dindo that we lost time, but I think we lost more than that, no? Because we lost opportunities. Because if the arbitral ruling was invoked, we could have stopped China from incursing into our territory, into our territorial waters, stopping our fishermen from fishing, and blocking the exploration done by local companies in the Reed Bank and other areas. So we did not lose only time, but we lost a lot. I think opportunities.
Because even if you even if you got back time, and we now have a fresh
Yeah.
6 years, hindi na ganun kadali ngayon bawiin yung mga yun.
Yeah, because it takes, I think, 10 years to develop an oil field, an oil and gas field. If we started exploring in the Reed Bank, by now we could have been a lot better. We are starting from scratch. So time, opportunities, money, everything, we lost a lot.
And time is really the most valuable resource that there is. Thank you so much for your time. One News's Defense Editor Manny Mogato.
Salamat, man.
Thank you.